Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 15, Texts 30 and 31. Tan Vikshya Vata Rashanan Chaturaha Kumaran Vridhan Dasha Ardha Vayasaha Vidita Atmatatvan Vitrena Cha Askalayatam Atat Arhanan Tau Tejaha Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilau Tanrikshavattarashanam Chaturakumaran
Tanvikshavattarashanam Chaturakumaran
Tanvikshavattarashanam Chaturakumaran
Tanvikshavattarashanam Chaturakumaran
Vridhan Dashardhavasayo Viditatma Tatvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vridhan Dashardhavasayo Vayaso Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Teja Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Chaturakumaran
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vitrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vitrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tan Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Tam Vikshavattarasanam Chaturakumaran
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tattvan
Vridhan Dashardhavayaso Viditatma Tatvan
Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Vitrena Chaskalayatam Matadarhanam Stau
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo
Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo. Tanviksharata Rasanam Satura Kumaran. Vidhan Dasardha Vayaso Tijatatma Tadvan. Vitrena Chaskalayata Matararhanang Sto. Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo. Tan, them. Vikshya, after seeing. Vatarashanan, naked. Chaturaha, four. Kumaran, boys. Vridhan, aged. Dashardha, 5 years. Vayasaha, appearing as of the age. Vidita, had realized. Atmatatvan, the truth of the self. Vitrena, with their staffs. Cha, also. Askalayatam, forbade. Atat arhanan, not deserving such from them. Tau, those two porters. Tejaha, glories. Vihasya, disregarding the etiquette. Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo, having a nature displeasing to the Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The 4 boy sages, who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, looked only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. Purport. The 4 sages were the firstborn sons of Brahma. Therefore, all other living entities, including Lord Shiva, are born later and are therefore younger than the 4 Kumaras. Although they looked like 5-year-old boys and traveled naked, the Kumaras were older than all other living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. Such saints were not to be forbidden to enter the kingdom of Vaikuntha, but by chance the doormen objected to their entrance. This was not fitting. The Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, but in spite of knowing this fact, the doormen astonishingly and outrageously prohibited them from entering. Text 31. Tabhyam mishatsvanim animisheshu nishidhyamanaha svarhatama hyapihare pratihara pabhyam uchu suhritamadi-didrikshita bhanga ishat kamanujena sahasata upaplutakshaha. Okay. Just do the translation purport, or do I do the word for word? Should I go through the word for word? Or just, okay. Translation. When the Kumaras, although by far the fittest persons, were thus forbidden entrance by the 2 chief doorkeepers of Sri Hari, while other divinities looked on, their eyes suddenly turned red because of anger due to their great eagerness to see their most beloved master, Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. Purport. According to the Vedic system, a sannyasi, a person in the renounced order of life, is dressed in saffron-colored garments. This saffron dress is practically a passport for the mendicant and sannyasi to go anywhere. The sannyasi's duty is to enlighten people in Krishna consciousness. Those in the renounced order of life have no other business but preaching the glories and supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Vedic sociological conception is that a sannyasi should not be restricted. He is allowed to go anywhere and everywhere he wants, and he has not refused any gift he might demand from a householder. The 4 Kumaras came to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. The word Suhritama, best of all friends, is important. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, he is the best friend of all living entities. Suhridam sarvabhutanam. No one can be a greater well-wishing friend to any living entity than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is so kindly disposed toward everyone that in spite of our completely forgetting our relationship with the Supreme Lord, he comes himself, sometimes personally as Lord Krishna appeared on this earth, and sometimes as his devotee, as did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. and sometimes he sends his bona fide devotees to reclaim all the fallen souls. Therefore, he is the greatest well-wishing friend of everyone, and the Kumaras wanted to see him. The doorkeepers should have known that the 4 sages had no other business, and therefore to restrict them from entering the palace was not apt. In this verse it is figuratively stated that the younger brother of desire suddenly appeared in person when the sages were forbidden to see their most beloved personality of Godhead. The younger brother of desire is anger. If one's desire is not fulfilled, the younger brother, anger, follows. Here we can mark that even great saintly persons like the Kumaras were also angry, but they were not angry for their personal interests. They were angry because they were forbidden to enter the palace to see the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the theory that in the perfectional stage one should not have anger is not supported in this verse. Anger will continue even in the liberated stage. These 4 mendicant brothers, the Kumaras, were considered liberated persons, but still they were angry because they were restricted in their service to the Lord. The difference between the anger of an ordinary person and that of a liberated person is that an ordinary person becomes angry because his sense desires are not being fulfilled, whereas a liberated person like the Kumaras becomes angry when restricted in the discharge of duties for serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous verse, it has been clearly mentioned that the Kumaras were liberated persons. Viditatma tattva means one who understands the truth of self-realization. One who does not understand the truth of self-realization is called ignorant, but one who understands the self, the super-self, their interrelation, and activities in self-realization is called Viditatma tattva. Although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhusuru Swayam Upakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utappadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sargadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Srivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Panchakalpaturviyascha Kripasandubhye Vichaptitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtadi Deshtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Can I get some of that water? Thank you. Tanvikshvata Rashanansh Chaturak Kumaran Vidhan Dashardha Vayaso Viditatma Tatvan Vetrena Chaskalayatam Matat Arhanam Sto Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilo. The 4 boy sages who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere looked only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. So here we're seeing this play out where the Jai and Vijay are blocking the way for the 4 Kumaras to enter Vaikuntha, and they've been, the four Kumaras wanted to go see the Lord. They wanted to go take darshan of the Lord, and so they're headed that way to Vaikuntha, and suddenly they're blocked. They made it through many doors, and then suddenly they were blocked by Jai and Vijay. And we understand, of course, that it's all part of the pastimes of the Lord in order to enact these pastimes where Jai and Vijay fall down into the material world and take on the form of demons in order to fight with the Lord, to satisfy his desires to fight. Because sometimes Krishna gets in that mood where he wants to fight, and he can't do it with a devotee, so he has to do it with a demon. And so all this is playing out, and that's one of the purposes of this pastime, and the other purpose is also to teach us a lesson about how dangerous it can be to make offenses to devotees, and to how we should be very careful in our dealings with devotees in order to avoid such fall downs and such horrible outcomes as this. We see that it might seem like a small act or a small offense almost, that they just block them from coming in. It's like a very quick thing. It happened in a very short amount of time. But the amount of trouble they had to go through because of that simple act, that very small act, that because of, like it's saying here, that they were blocking their way because they were despising their glories, actually. So it's almost like a malicious thing, actually, that they were despising of the Kumaras, which sounds pretty brutal, like to despise someone's glories. But we can see that as conditioned souls, that's our general tendency, is to despise the glories of others, because we want to be glorified, and if someone else has glories that are greater than ours, then we naturally despise that, right? And so this is something that we have to be extremely careful about and mindful of in our Krishna consciousness, in order to see those anarthas that are there, that tendency that is there to despise others and want to put ourselves above them, and to put ourselves as greater than. We are allowed to be here and you are not. That's kind of the attitude that they had. Oh, we are the doorkeepers, the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, and we're supposed to be here, but you four boys, you're some naked 5-year-old boys. Who are you? Get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. And it's an important lesson as well, because the appearance of these 4 Kumaras, like he's saying, they had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere. They looked only 5 years old, but in fact they were the oldest of all living creatures. So, as the common saying, looks can be deceiving. So what we might see externally with our conditioned material vision might be much different from what is actually the fact and the reality of the situation. So we never know actually who we're dealing with. We don't know who they actually are, because again, we have this material vision, we're conditioned, but ultimately everyone is a servant of Krishna, and we don't know exactly what kind of servant of Krishna they are, who they actually are in reality. And so we should be very careful in our dealings in that way. Now these 4 boys, they're appearing 5 years old, they're naked, so if some 4 or 5-year-old naked boys walked up here, we would probably also block them and come in, put on some clothes, get out of here, So, but the duty of Jai and Vijay was, again, the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, so their entire duty is to allow who's allowed to come in and disallow who's not allowed to come in. But I was kind of thinking of it, it must be pretty rare for someone who's not supposed to be there to somehow, how do you get there if you're not meant to be there, right? You can't enter Vaikuntha unless you're, a pure devotee. It's not like there's some kind of cheat code where you can just take the materialist can't go and build a spaceship and just blast through all the coverings of the material universe and make it all the way to Vaikuntha somehow, just through, some advancement in material science. So there's already a checks and balances in place there. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that there's the gatekeepers are there. It's like kind of interesting thinking. I'm wondering how many times have they had to reject anybody? Is it that it ever happens? And just the fact that it happened, it's just again, it's all the arrangement of the Lord, because again, it's saying that these they call it porters, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's referring to Jai and Vijay there. They possessed a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, and this is completely uncharacteristic of pure devotees, that they have a disposition unpalatable to the Lord. A pure devotee means that they are completely favorable to the Lord, and that everything they do is for the pleasure of Krishna, and therefore for them to have a disposition unpalatable to the Lord is just, it's a contradiction, it's a paradox. It doesn't make much sense, actually. So again, we can understand that this was an arrangement by Krishna to have all of this play out, and where giant Vijay will fall down into the material world and come as first as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and then Ravana and Kumbhakarna, right? And then Shishupal and Dantavakra, right? Is it? In Krishna Lila? Yeah. Right, so they will come and take birth as these demons in order to fight the Lord and to fulfill his desire to engage in that rasa, that fighting rasa. And so in the purport here, Prabhupada is just saying that, that the Kumaras, they were, although appearing so young and like 5-year-old boys, actually they were older than all living creatures, and they had realized the truth of the self. So such saints were not to be forbidden to enter the kingdom of Vaikuntha, but by chance the doormen objected to their entrance. So it's by chance, it's saying, and this was not fitting. And so another point, that the Kumaras, while they appeared to be these young boys, actually when you realize why they're those young boys that are naked, a lot more is revealed, and it actually becomes much more clear that their exalted position, that they, by their mystic powers, they've been able to not age past the age of 5. In order for that, they wouldn't come to the age of puberty, where sex desire arises, because they realize immediately, upon appearing in this world, the enemy of self-realization is sex desire. And so it's just actually they're the oldest living entities, but it's just they're so much further from just like some 4 naked 5-year-old boys. It's like they're the opposite of that. They're extremely wise sages, self-realized sages that have understood the greatest source of fall down in the material world, and they've avoided that very intelligently through, again, extremely powerful mystic powers that we can't conceive of. That they stop the aging of their bodies. Pretty amazing. And I was also just thinking along these lines that they're traveling naked is another sign of their renunciation. Right? They're in the renounced order of life. They chose not to enter married life, and Brahma became very angry because of that. But they were completely within their rights to do so, and this is actually the highest thing to do. It transcends all of our other duties, all duties to enter into family life and have children, progeny, and all these things that Brahma was wanting them to do, because that was his task, was to populate the universe. And so his sons were naturally meant to carry on that and help him carry out his task. But even though they completely disregarded that duty that they had, there's actually no fault on their end, because they were pursuing something even higher than that, much higher, which is self-realization and becoming free from the clutches of material existence, and also setting that example for others. And so as these, in this renounced order of life, they're traveling around naked, and other examples we have of that, Shukadeva Goswami, he was also traveling around, didn't wear any clothes. And what do you say? Rishabdev, yeah, Rishabdev. Even, in the modern age, maybe they're not completely naked, but the Goswamis would just wear kopin. What is this? You were just reading it. Kantashito, kopina kantashito. Yeah. So they had their kopin, their kamandalu. It doesn't say that in there, but in their kanta, it's like a blanket or something.
It's a shawl.
Shawl. Okay, yeah. So that's the only 3 possessions they had. These 3 things, and this renunciation is displayed by great devotees to show that even this wearing of clothes, they renounce even that, and they sleep under a different tree every night and all these things. So it's to show a level of renunciation that we shouldn't imitate, but we can understand is indicative of their level of detachment from the material world and material, even societal expectations of you and things like that. Shukadeva Goswami would go around, and there was that group of, it was like, I guess, women and children that would follow him and laugh at him and tease him because he was just he appeared as though a madman, right? Someone that's walking around naked is generally thought to be a madman. You might see like a homeless person on the street in Atlanta, just naked. I've seen it before. And, you can understand it's a madman, it's a crazy person. So, people without the proper spiritual vision will group that, someone like, again, Shukadeva Goswami or these 4 Kumars in that same group as someone crazy, but someone that truly understands, can understand that this person is extremely detached. Similarly, Vamsidas Babaji is another example of someone who is extremely renounced and would just wear kopin and appeared as though a madman. So the point, at least I'm taking from this verse specifically, is that looks can be very deceiving, and we should be very careful about our judgment of others and how we're judging someone else in our mind. At the same time, we should have proper vision and understand things according to Shastra, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and understand that if someone is simply imitating these great personalities, but at the same time, we should be careful in our approach to such things. Now, the next verse, I want to get into that because it's a little bit longer. So, when the Kumaras, although by far the fittest persons, were thus forbidden entrance by the 2 chief doorkeepers of Sri Hari, while other divinities looked on, their eyes suddenly turned red because of anger due to their great eagerness to see their most beloved master, Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. And so here we see the Kumars getting very angry, and they're preparing to curse Jai and Vijay. And again, this it comes to the same thing, that these don't seem like activities of a very saintly person, that they're naked and they're cursing people and they're getting very angry. But as Prabhupada is explaining in the purport here very clearly, this anger, when used in the service of Krishna, when used to not satisfy our own senses, but to satisfy the senses of Krishna or to advance our service and devotional service, specifically when someone impedes our service to the Lord, this anger that comes about in that situation is not material and it's not contaminating. It's actually spiritual. And we see this happening, and it's very nice that if you look in the Sanskrit, this kama nujena. So in the word for word, kama nujena, by the younger brother of lust, anger. So instead of saying, krodha in the Sanskrit, it says kama nujena. And I thought that was really nice because, and Prabhupada explains it in the purport, that as we know, that from lust comes anger, and then from anger, illusion, and all these things follow. And it talks about in the Bhagavad Gita that, the very first step is this lust, this desire to lord it over material nature, this desire to satisfy our own senses. This comes about, and then all these other things come about. And it's nice because the Bhagavatam here it's telling this pastime of the Kumaras, and it's also at the same time giving us this kind of like transcendental knowledge of, again, a reference to the Bhagavad, or same also from the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is there, but it's just throwing that in there, like, instead of just saying, again, anger, it says the younger brother of lust. So it's reminding us, anger comes from lust. And so just by reading this passage, we can remember that, also Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that, lust and then anger, and this is this process of falling down into illusion. And it can, again, it just is really nice to remind us of that. But because of this desire, this lust of the 4 Kumaras to see the Lord, which is a completely spiritual desire, they became angry when they were blocked from doing so. And again, the point is that there is no problem with this. And again, someone that is very spiritual and they're interested in, meditation, and they want to become enlightened or whatever it is, they might see someone like, I don't know, there's so many fake gurus that put on this air of very happy and loving and peaceful and everything's all good, and they never show anger. They say, oh no, anger's bad. We should have these kind of qualities. They might see something like this, or they might see, for example, there's this pastime of Srila Prabhupada where there was a Pandal program, and then I don't know the exact details, but there was a young man who was like a hippie, and he came up and he started arguing with Prabhupada, and he started questioning him in a way that was not conducive for his advancement in spiritual life. He wasn't submissively asking if you can see God. Yeah, he wasn't asking very submissively at all. He was more so demanding and looking down on Prabhupada or something like that, and just arguing with him, argumentatively questioning him. And Prabhupada became angry, and he chastised him, and he fought back with him. And then apparently, after that happened, many of the attendees, they got up and left, because they said, oh, this Swami, why is he acting like this? He's acting so angry. He lost his composure. But this is not the proper understanding. And if they had actually understood, again, teachings of Bhagavad Gita, that tadvini paripatena pariprashanena sevaya upadekshanti te gyanam gyaninas tadvadarshana, that one should approach the self-realized spiritual master and inquire submissively in order to attain this spiritual knowledge, because without that attitude of submission and looking up to the spiritual master and seeing that, okay, they have knowledge and I don't. I'm in ignorance, and they have seen the truth. What is this? Ganinas tattvadarshina. They're tattvadarshi. They've seen the truth, and so therefore they can impart the knowledge unto us. Arjuna is asking all these questions, and what do I do? What about this? What about that? And Krishna says, just do this. Just approach a bona fide spiritual master and inquire from him submissively. And he can tell you everything because he's seen the truth. So this is the very simple process. But this younger man, this hippie, was approaching in such a wrong way, and Prabhupada, correctly reacted in that way in order to make a point that he wasn't approaching with the proper humility to inquire from the spiritual master. Therefore, he won't be able to, even if I told him the answer to his question, he won't accept it, and he won't be able to actually make any advancement in spiritual life because of that. And so the point is that this anger, actually everything can be used in the service of Krishna. Everything can be dovetailed into our service with Krishna. And there's so many other examples of anger being used. Krishna himself can get very angry, and he exhibits it in many different ways. And again, all the qualities that we have as spirit souls, we are part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, we have all of his qualities in minute quantity. And so that anger is there. Nrsimhadev was extremely angry, so much angry that when he appeared when he burst out of the pillar, the demigods thought the entire universe was about to get destroyed, and everything was trembling and shaking. I mean, the amount of anger that he had is just, we can't fathom that. So when we get very angry, you might think that the eyes became red, and it's a very intense thing. But the anger of the Lord must be just billions, trillions, quadrillions, just infinitely greater than the anger that we can experience as these tiny parts and parcels. And it's very glorious. It's actually when the Lord gets angry, it's there's nothing negative about it, right? When we become materially angry, it's because we are desiring to have our senses gratified, and they don't get gratified in the way we want. And that's a miserable thing, because again, it just takes us lower and lower and lower and lower until we fall into illusion, fall into the material pool, and fall back into this cycle of birth and death. But when the Lord does it, when the devotees do it, it's in the service of the Lord. And so it's a glorious thing. I thought it was really nice too, because the Kumars, they want to see the Lord, and as I was saying in the previous verse as well, the Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras. So, in spite of this, the doorman astonishingly and outrageously prohibited them from entering. So the Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, and the sages, the Kumaras, are very anxious to go see the Lord, so much so that when they're blocked from doing so, they become extremely angry. And so this attraction, this mutual attraction between the devotees and the Lord is very, very nice. And that Prabhupada is saying in the purport here that the word suhritama, best of all friends, is important. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, he is the best friend of all living entities. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. No one can be a greater well-wishing friend to any living entity than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the devotees are, incredibly attracted to the Lord, so much so that they are willing to do anything to see Him. And the Lord is also always anxious to serve sages like the Kumars. It's not that He's always desiring to do it or always, considering serving devotees, but He's always anxious to do it. So anxious, we know what anxiety feels like. It means it's like it's eating at you. It's just, it has to be done. It's overwhelmingly, uncomfortable to not be doing that thing if we're anxious to do something. I remember just right before we, purchased this property, I was in a lot of anxiety, just constantly in anxiety that, oh my gosh, and there was a million different check boxes to check to make sure that this is like going to work for us, and we had to do this test, and then that day, myself and Chandan had to drive up here and drive around and test every single pond, and then we had to drive up to Manchester and drop it off, and we just made it in time, 10 minutes before. It was like anxiety. So this is a very intense, emotion, intense feeling, this anxiety that we have. And so the Lord is anxious to serve the sages like the Kumaras and all devotees. And then these Kumaras are also anxious, you could say, to go and see the Lord and serve the Lord. Again, so much so that they're willing to severely curse anybody that impedes their way. And so, it's just really a beautiful thing. And again, seeing the Lord is one thing, and the Kumaras are not wrong to have that desire. Of course, every devotee should have that desire and wants to take darshan of the Lord, wants to see the Lord face to face. But more important than that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would emphasize so many times, is that it's one thing to want to see the Lord, but we should act in such a way that the Lord wants to see us. Because ultimately, who are we to see the Lord? We've been maybe in this material world for how many trillions of years, lifetimes, just going in the cycle of birth and death, just simply pleasing our senses, simply focusing on I, me, and mine. How can I get what I want? Disregarding everyone else, disregarding the Lord completely, forgetting about the Lord. And now we may have been practicing devotional service for some time, a few years, and we are attempting to reform ourselves. But to simply think that that's qualification to see the Lord is, it's kind of puffed up, I guess you could say. It's very, it's very audacious of us to think that. Again, this idea that comes about, this analogy of, well, I want to see the president. I want to see the president. So I'm just going to go stand outside the White House and yell and scream until they let me in. But it's never going to happen. We have to become qualified to see the president if we want to see him. And we should act in such a way that he wants to see us. We should do something that he would want to see us. So in the same way, we should try to get the attention of the Lord, not by not that we go and try, let me see you, but we should act in a way that pleases the Lord and pleases the acharyas and pleases our spiritual master, so that we can ultimately come to the point of the Lord wanting to see us and thinking of us and having that point where He's anxious to see us. Now, the Lord might be anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, but we don't want to think that we're going to come to the point of where the Lord is anxious to serve us, because we should never accept service from the Lord. We should only render service to Him. But it's a very nice and beautiful play and relationship between the devotee and the Spirit and the Lord, because the Lord is duty bound to accept service from the living entity. It's just His constitutional position that He is Ishvara. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, and He's meant to accept service from the devotees. But still, he expertly can try to avoid that in certain ways. But the devotee, again, the Lord is trying to give service to the devotee, but the devotee is meant to serve the Lord. So the devotee is very expert at avoiding this direct service of the Lord. And so it's a beautiful play. And we see it between devotees as well, just in our ashram, that we try to serve each other and we try to avoid being served by each other, and try to wash someone else's plate, or do someone else's laundry, fold their laundry, that kind of thing. And if someone else does that for us, we feel bad. I feel like, it feels not pleasurable at all. But it's completely the opposite of what happens in the material world amongst conditioned souls, that when someone is serving us, we feel, oh, this is very nice, this is good. And when we're meant to serve someone else, we feel, it feels off-putting, and it doesn't sit right, because we want to take that position of Krishna ultimately. That's the idea, that we're trying to take his position. And so, another important point that's being made here in this purport is that the four Kumaras, again, they're in the renounced order of life, as I was saying before, and they're traveling all over, and now they want to go to Vaikuntha, they want to see the Lord. But the point is that someone in this renounced order of life, according to the Varnashram system, the actual duty of that person in the renounced order of life, the sannyasi, is to enlighten people in Krishna consciousness, and they have no other business but preaching. And so therefore, this orange dress is actually referred to here as a passport, right? It's it's practically a passport for the mendicant and sannyasi to go anywhere. So actually in proper, Vedic culture, the mendicant, the sannyasi, the renunciate, they have full liberty to go anywhere they want and ask anything of anyone, which is quite amazing. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that they abuse that, because if they abuse that, then they're no longer a bona fide renunciate. If they're simply going around and using that orange cloth to satisfy their own senses, then they're not qualified to actually do that. They're not qualified to be in that dress. But if they are simply using everything for the service of the Lord, then yes, it's actually completely bona fide for them to go. And like it says, like Prabhupada says, they can go into a householder, they can go to a householder, and he's not refused any gift he might demand from a householder. So he can ask anything he wants from a householder, and he should not be refused that, right? And so, again, it's not something to be abused or anything like that, but there's so much that's needed for Krishna's service, and infinite money can be employed in Krishna's service. Infinite resources from this world can be employed in serving Krishna, and so it's actually our duty, and that's what we do. That's what that's what the book distributors go around and they beg, and they actually not only beg, but they demand money from the just the common people, the householder, hard-earned wealth. Give it to me and take these books, and not only and this is just referring to a sannyasi just begging for whatever he wants, but what we're doing is we're giving these Srila Prabhupada's books, which are worth more than any amount of money. And so, of course, that's what, again, the duty of the sannyasi is to go beg and also give transcendental knowledge. But what better way to give this knowledge to anybody than through Prabhupada's books? And so we're practically seeing what is written in this purport is what Prabhupada has given us, the formula Prabhupada has given us is exactly to follow this exact purport here, and that this part of Vedic culture, that the renunciate is meant to travel around to beg alms and to beg from the common people, the householders, and to give them in exchange for there's a reciprocal relationship there, that they're giving something even much more valuable than whatever money or material donations might be given to the sannyasi. And so it's a really important purport as well here. This can be used as well for raising donations from grihastas, because you can say that Prabhupada is saying here, a sannyasi should not be refused any gift that he might demand from a householder. So I'm asking for this gift from you, and I shouldn't be refused for it. So there's quite a lot of different things in this purport. I think I've covered most of it. If there are any comments or questions or things I missed, please feel free to ask. Yes, Prabhu.
Well, I have one question just to just kind of clarify what we spoke last time. The four Kumaras, they wanted to see the Lord as detailed, in the Bhagavatam. And of course, the whole thing is that they got rejected from doing that in the angular rose. But I thought that maybe I'm just like not remembering properly, so kind of help me see. I thought the four Kumaras were impersonalists, and then it was when they smelled the tulsi leaves offered to the Lord, then they became attracted to serve the Lord. So how is it that they wanted to see the Lord? It kind of indicates that there was some like attraction to service previously, but I thought they were impersonalists. So
they were impersonalists, and they were. I mean, as far as I understand, they were wanting to go to Vaikuntha and see Vaikuntha. They were just kind of going around and seeing different things, and then let's go to Vaikuntha and see what that is, But they were completely liberated in the fact that they were completely detached from matter. They understood they're not the body. They had full self-realization in that way. But similarly, like Shukadeva Goswami was also liberated, but then he heard the Bhagavatam, and he became attracted in that way. It's I've heard it's kind of like a gray area as far as I understand, like in terms of exactly their status before that. But just because they're impersonalists doesn't mean that they're like offensive to the Lord. They're not Mayavadis. They're not saying that they are the Lord. So there is like impersonal liberation in that way. In that, again, where you become completely detached from matter, you're disidentified from matter completely and self-realized in terms of, what does it say here? This word, there's a Sanskrit term here. Viditatma tattvan, yeah. They've realized the truth of the self. So they were in that category. And so therefore, when you're in that category, and then you become, as we're seeing, like with Shukadeva Goswami, and then with them, when you get exposed to devotional service or to, if you hear, like they heard the Bhagavatam and then smelled the tulsi leaves, when your senses become attracted to that, and that's what happened actually, is like Shukadeva Goswami is like, wait, why am I attracted to this? I'm liberated, like I shouldn't be attracted to anything material. So therefore this must be spiritual. And the same thing with them being attracted to the Lord, that they were thinking, how is this possible that we're attracted right now? Because we're not attracted to anything. So again, that's also another way to show us how this, again, even those in personal liberation, higher than that is this. But yeah, in terms of what your question, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe Vishnu knows.
Well, it was the arrangement of the Supreme Lord. Generally, as impersonalists, they would not even get access to Vaikuntha. But as impersonalists, they reached the Brahmajyoti, and they kept going forward, and they crossed the Brahmajyoti. They reached the abode of the Supreme Lord, and then naturally they wanted to see more. And actually, the Supreme Lord infused, and because you cannot enter Vaikuntha without a devotional attitude, so the Lord gave them the devotional attitude. Of course, they're also sons of Brahma. Brahma is a devotee, pure devotee. So, they exhibit the pastime, just like Shukadeva Goswami, of being impersonalists and then becoming attracted to the Supreme Lord. And so it's a process, so that you see that process playing out. It's not that it's a black and white switch. So.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
There was a nice verse I was looking for. I couldn't find it, but anyways, when Kruta Maharaj actually hears from the four Kumaras, because you're making this point about like a man can go anywhere within Vedic. He was saying that he would like to offer whatever he could basically to the four Kumaras after they came into this assembly and spoke his transcendental knowledge unto them. But he's like, I don't actually have anything to give you, because everything that I have was basically given to me by just the sages who like turned his body and gave him what the kingdom, because the kingdom was already there. He takes that position after King Vena gets killed and whatnot, and he automatically just kind of assumes the position. Everything is like pretty much given to him. He just has to facilitate. He's like, I didn't have to do anything. This was all given to me. And Prabhupada makes a point in that purport that actually everything belongs to, I believe he was saying, to like, this is not so much, I guess, social. Yeah, he was saying everything belongs actually to the Brahmanas, and it's just like a Kshatriya class, like who they're like
Distribute.
to distribute.
Oh.
He's like a bank teller. He doesn't own the money. He just gives it when it's needed. But
Nice.
anyways, it's probably more nicely divorced phrase by Prabhupada, but I couldn't find that purport in the text, so sorry.
It reminded me of what you just said, that just more on this point of that sannyasis should be allowed to go anywhere, but now we see in our society that it's one thing like, okay, in the West, which is just completely detached from Vedic culture or whatever, if like a sannyasi tries to go to like, the White House or something, maybe it's not going to be allowed. But even within devotional society, we see sannyasis being banned, so-called banned, from different temples of Krishna. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's like the basic principle of Vedic society is that sannyasis should be allowed, and they should be welcomed with kirtan and garlanded and worshipped. But instead, they're being told you can't come here. It's really, wow. We have a long way to go. So, my Chandan said something. Okay. All right. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Panchakalpa Tripurusha Kripa Sandhibhivcha Titanam Pavanibhya Vaishnavibhya Namaha.
Somebody's not like properly